To begin, remove the lug bolts and front rim from the vehicle. Next, remove the brake and sensor lines from the shock. The brake line will be held to the shock by a metal clip, while the sensor lines can be pulled away from the shock to be removed. Remove the two nuts and bolts holding the shock to the hub of the vehicle. Under the hood, remove the 3 bolts holding the shock's upper mount to the shock tower. The shock will now be free and can be removed from the vehicle. Using spring compressors, remove the top nut from the OEM suspension. The top mount and bearing will be reused on the Raceland coilover. Place the bearing onto the top hat, the mount onto the bearing, the washer on top of the mount, and tighten the supplied nut. Place the coilover into the shock tower by aligning the top mount studs and tighten the 3 nuts holding the mount to the tower. Lift the hub onto the coilover and reinstall the hardware to secure the strut to the hub. You can now reclip the sensor and brake lines to the strut body. Reinstall the front wheel as the installation for this corner is complete. To begin the rear installation, remove the lug bolts and rim from the vehicle. You can now remove the bolt holding the OEM strut to the bracket on the hub. Locate the strut mount at the top of the strut and remove the 2 nuts holding the upper mount to the rear shock tower. The shock will now be free to be removed from the wheel well. Using spring compressors, remove the upper nut holding the upper strut mount to the OEM suspension. Then, remove the mount from the strut. Before installing the mount onto the Raceland coilover, ensure that the OEM lower washer and bushing are placed onto the strut. Slide the mount onto the coilover. Place the upper washer on the strut, and tighten these components down with the supplied nut. Slide the coilover into its position in the rear shock tower by aligning the mount with the mounting studs. Reinstall the 2 nuts to secure to the mount of the shock tower. You will now bolt the bottom of the coilover to the strut bracket on the rear hub. You can now reinstall the rear wheel as the installation for this corner is complete.